using silence, it adds more weight to what you're saying.
Being very mindful of the words that we pick, but also being very intentional with how we say them.
The reason why you should slow down is because
with Italian, I think when you think about languages and how we sort of emulate people who speak the language as natives, clearly in my mind, for some reason, I've associated an Italian male voice with an octave or two lower than mine. You know,
higher, you mean?
Higher. Sorry, higher than mine.
Because if we went lower, you'd be fully Barry White, wouldn't you?
Yeah. No. I mean, I can't hold my breath for that long anyway. So, so I think part of the reason why Italian me is a bit higher in the pitch, apart from the obvious psychological part of, being more approachable and so on, is also I probably associate the voice Italian man with higher.
You're reflecting back at people.
Well, that's what we do.
What they expect to hear. Right.
We do it unconsciously, even with our bodies. I've been told that I'm more animated in Italian than I am in English. So we do sort of emulate these behavioral traits that we, on some level, pick up from native speakers of the language,
So when you're speaking Italian, you're reflecting back, you're taking on the cultural nuance of expressing yourself in that language, right?
Yes.
So do you find that you speed up when you speak Italian versus when you speak English?
That is such a great question. And that is sort of yes. But I think that is a combination of two things, right?
Okay.
One, it's because I'm naturally a bit more quicker in my pace of speaking. When I speak, obviously, English or any other language that I speak very, very comfortably at a native level. So that would be English and Soto. So that's one factor that why I might speak quickly. The second factor is, yes, that I've probably associated Italian speakers as being very fast when they speak. And as a result, I try to emulate that. But I've actually made a conscious decision to actually speak slower because I spend so much of my time. I don't know about you. I spend so much of my time speaking to my clients, especially the high levels, B2 plus, on just slowing down a bit the level of speaking more than I do with my lower levels. So I've consciously now, when I speak Italian, I kind of remind myself of that to slow down a little bit, And what about you?
Yeah. Good question. Well, I think recently I've had a bit of a leap with my language experience. And so
for celebration.
I've stopped worrying so much and focusing more on communicating. Now, I'm B1-ish learner of Italian. My process is still very slow. That I don't speak quickly in English, to be honest with you. Okay, yes, for the podcast, for my work, I speak slower than I normally do, but I'm very deliberate about how I speak, even in English when I'm speaking with other native speakers. So my natural speed is slightly slower. That being said, there are moments when I'm not thinking about what I'm doing, where I'm able to change my pace in order to control the emotion or the intention of what I'm doing. So I think this is something that comes with what we've spoken about before in terms of confidence, charisma. For me, pacing is so important for how you deliver information, particularly in presentation, but even in conversation.
Today's Spot the Collie is with the noun intention. See how many you can find.
For me, it's probably the key factor from the 6 tools that we have in our vocal toolbox. Thank you very much, Julian Treasure. Link in description below. For me, pacing is the most important one, and I think it's the one that people spend the least time on understanding.
I think you've opened up a great sort of conversation here. You started off quite nicely because The question I'd like to ask you then is slow and clear. Are they the same thing or are they two different things?
I mean, you could be slow and not be clear, and you will be able to tell because people will be very bored listening to you. So, yes, I do think they are very different things.
Okay,
Clarity is to do with the language that you use. The slowness is at the speed at which you deliver that information.
Okay. All right.
Do you agree?
Yes. Another element I'd add to clarity is you've spoken about word choice essentially, right? Choosing the right word, grading your language to your audience. Part of clarity for me as well, what I'd add is enunciation and pronunciation.
Right.
That's part of clarity. So being very mindful of the words that we pick, but also being very intentional with how we say them, not just the speed at which we say them, but how we say them, the movement of the lips, where the tongue goes. You spoke about how slowness can lead to boring, which is often one of the first things that clients will say when you recommend that they speak a bit slower. Is there something that you generally advise your clients to do in order for them not to be boring while slowing down their pace of speaking?
Well, I mean, the obvious thing in that sense is to make sure that you're varying your pitch and your tone, because I can speak slower, but as long as there's a bit of variety in my up and down with my voice, it's much better than I'm speaking slowly and at the same pitch and tone. I sound a bit like a robot, right? The thing that I find for most people is the reason why they're speaking quickly is because they're nervous. So the first thing I work on is breathing, relax. It's okay. If you slow down, it gives your brain a chance to work out what's coming next. And you won't get to a point and go, and get stuck in the frozen zone, right?
Yeah.
The biggest advantage of slowing your speech down is you begin to avoid making those horrible filler noises.
Or maybe if you're Italian, holding on to the last syllable of the word. And
because I haven't finished speaking.
And I'm about to break into song.
No, I mean, I understand in Italian, it's a signal using the number. It's a signal to the other person that you haven't finished speaking. Don't interrupt me.
But up to a certain point, though,
Up to a certain point. True.
If you do it once or twice in the conversation, it's acceptable. But I think after 3 times, you start to come across as, does this person actually know what they're talking about? I think in any language.
That's the thing. That's the thing is depending on the level that it's being used and how long that space is in between what you were saying and continuing with what you were saying. In a lot of communication, it starts to make you look unintelligent, unfortunately. So by slowing down, it helps you to create a clear intention of where you're going with the conversation. And by filling those spaces with pauses and letting silence interrupt your thought pattern, it shows that you are much more deliberate and
much more intentional, I'd say, in your delivery.
Yeah, it's clearer. It's a stronger intention. It's saying I'm confident in what I'm saying and I know where I'm going. I'm pausing to provide clarity.
I'm pausing to give you time to digest all the information I've just given you.
Oh God, silence is fantastic for that, right?
Yeah. No, in all its forms. And you've made some really great points, which I'm also going to start recommending to my clients, how you can be slow yet avoid being boring by varying your intonation. That is true. You also mentioned that people generally speak quicker because they're nervous, right? Now, and then the solution to that one as well, great deep breathing. We spoke about box breathing before.
Mm-hmm.
There is a other type of person who battles with slowing down the pace at which they speak. And
Right.
these are people who are naturally fast speakers in their own native language.
Right.
What can we do for those people who are naturally fast speakers in their own language? And they try to bring that over into English. And maybe at B2, some of them can do so somewhat successfully, but it's extra frustrating for someone who's like at B1 and, speaks a mile a minute in their own language.
Right.
And they have to now slow down in English. It's just such a battle. So what do we do for them?
Well, we're not saying you have to go like Ace Ventura, slow motion replay, right?
Pop culture reference.
I'm gonna execute a button hook pattern super slow mo.
Pop culture reference.
That's
Although
not
that
what.
could really help with pronunciation.
Oh yeah, oh, yeah. This is what you were saying about enunciation. When you exaggerate everything, it makes it clearer to understand. We're not asking people to do that. But what I would like to start by doing is pointing out what happens when you try to speak as quickly in English as you do in your native language, is you start substituting English words with your native language words because your brain doesn't have time to work out what the English word you need is. And you just go pam with the language, but for someone that's listening to you, they're listening to some hybrid language, which is English and something else, and it can be confusing unless the other person knows what your native language is. It's a clear example of where there could be communication breakdown. For you as the person speaking quickly, your brain is just trying to fill in the blanks because you are going bum, 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 bum. But for the person that's listening to you, even if they're holding space for you to clearly communicate what you want, it can be very difficult to follow because the whole conversation is peppered with a language that they don't know or understand.
Okay, so that's definitely one of the things, right? So think about how that affects your communication negatively.
Yeah.
In terms of clarity and being understood.
Yeah. Exactly. It's about awareness as much as anything. The reason why you should slow down is because you're not communicating in a way that everyone is able to understand. For example, when I work with Italians who are B1 level, I understand them because I have enough language that when they use these words, I know what they are, so I understand what the intention is that they have with what they're trying to say. But if it was with another English person who has no experience of the Italian language, it would be very confusing for them.
Yeah. What can they do? I mean, I think you've given a great example of how it affects clear communication. But what can they actually do to try to slow that down? Because it's sort of going against what they have learned, and people sometimes we believe that it's just the way we are, but the reality is that's the habit we've practiced for a long time and we can really break it. For example, this is a good example of a habit, getting into the habit of speaking very quickly. How do we help them to sort of start breaking this habit? Because I find those are the people who struggle the most with it. The people who speak too fast because of being nervous at the time, they generally are able to fix that as soon as they become aware that, okay, I'm too nervous in these situations. So going back to what we said the last time, I prepare for those situations when I know I'm going to be in them.
Right.
And when they just happen to come out of nowhere, I remember that, okay, the most important thing is to communicate.
Yeah.
But if someone is a natural fast speaker, you can see how that can be challenging to sort of, go against the script, so to speak, right?
Right.
What has become the script for them at that point when it comes to the pace of speaking.
Okay. So I think that preparation is a big part of this. If we're talking about presentation and some sort of formal situation that you're going to be speaking at, in your preparation, you should have an idea of how long you have to speak in that situation. Let's call it 15 minutes. So when you practice giving your presentation, you time yourself. And if you're giving a 15-minute presentation in 10 minutes, you're obviously speaking too quickly. And so therefore, slow down. Use the time that you have. You may not get another 15 minutes. So use the time that you have. And always, always, always start slower than you think you should. Even after you've practiced and you have a good idea of what kind of speed you should start slower anyway. Because the likelihood is in that pressure environment, actually, when you are in front of people, you're going to speed up through the presentation. And so really focus on starting slower than you think you should and really taking your time with the first 2 or 3 slides on the introduction. And then keep an eye on the clock. If you can see, okay, I'm starting to run out of time, you can start to speed up a bit. But you should have markers. How long am I spending on each of these slides? At what point do I need to be at the 10-minute mark? How much time do I want to spend on my conclusion as the most important part of my presentation? So giving yourself time references, markers to hit during the presentation. I mean, we all have the best of intentions with these kind of situations, but through your preparation, you can actually see, you give yourself points of reference throughout the presentation that you need to get to, and then you can choose whether to speed up or slow down based on those.
In addition to this, particularly for the people who say, well, I'm a generally fast speaker in my own language, I ask them to start doing a survey of people in and around them, colleagues, partners, and ask them how easy or difficult is it for them to understand them, especially when they're giving instructions. More often than not, more often than not, they come back saying, well, when I asked my partner this, or when I asked that colleague this, or one person or 2 people among the group that they would have asked will have come back and said, yeah, look, I'll be honest with you. Sometimes I have a hard time understanding you, particularly when you're giving me instructions or particularly when you're asking about certain details. So what I found that helps them as well to put it into perspective is realize that even in your own native language, being a fast speaker all the time comes at the expense of maybe having to repeat yourself sometimes when you could have just had that conversation once and that's it, or send that in email once, so that's it, or being as clear as possible in the first instruction. So I find that once they realize that it affects their communication in their own language, they start to bring it over into English.
Exactly.
Another thing that I say to them is, don't speak slowly, speak slower. And I usually then ask them and say, okay, in your native language, on a scale of 1 to 5, with 1 being slow and 5 being extremely fast, where would you gauge your natural speaking speed? Whatever number that you give me, then I say, okay, then go 1 down. We do the same exercise in English. That one we do together because I feel like I'm in a great position to tell them where or less they are on the scale. And whatever number we get to as the natural, then we go one lower. It gives them a good place to start from, where they can then start to play with the speed and find what is then the new natural speed in speaking English. Test it in your own language firstly. Try to understand how that may be affecting your communication in your own language. And you'll find that it may have similar effects in English, if not worse in some situations.
Absolutely. The military use a really good phrasing for this. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast. If you're able to speak slowly and clearly, two different skills, but if you can do both, you only have to explain things once. That's going to save you a lot of time in the long run in the business environment.
Do you feel like there's a correlation to silence and control? Should I rephrase the question?
No, I'm just thinking.
Oh.
Just thinking. You're interrupting my silence. Look, silence is very powerful in communication. It allows you to make a point and leave that there for someone to think about. It shows the person that you're speaking to that you're genuinely thinking about what they've said and how to respond. And showing that kind of care and attention to the words that you use is very powerful in my mind. It allows you to be more articulate. Using silence, it adds more weight to what you're saying. If you go on TED, you watch any of the world's best speakers, we have a list. Well, check the description below for a playlist of all of our favorite speakers. You will see that all of them, when they really want to make a point, whether that's emotional or logical, they make the point and then they leave silence for quite a long period. And then maybe add a few words in between when they get going again, right? They pick up the pace a little bit afterwards. It's a weapon in your communication toolkit. And there are too many people that fear leaving these pauses when they're speaking. But actually, it's such a powerful thing that you can do.
What it does as well, when you take your time in general when you're speaking, so speaking slower, which means allowing for silence to take place, you communicating the message to whoever you're speaking to that I'm quite comfortable and very confident about what it is I'm speaking about right now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in complete control of how quickly I'm saying things, what it is that I'm saying, my emotional state at the time as well. And if you look at some of the speeches that often get mentioned, you'll find a lot of this. You obviously, the Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream, is probably one of the most quoted speeches and great examples of great public speaking. Malala Yousafzai is another great example of using pace. Maybe she's a naturally slow speaker. English is her second language, or maybe even her third. I'm not sure. But she's another great example and another person who often gets mentioned as a great public speaker. Another one who uses silence, who uses slowness, not necessarily to be slow, but slowness, slowing themselves down,
Mm-hmm.
and enunciation, clarity to convey their messages. So I agree with you. When you start looking at TEDs, especially our listeners who are, or watchers who are B2 and higher, when you're looking at TEDs now, you're no longer just looking for language, because at B2, whenever one person is speaking, we can understand most of it. You might miss a word or two here and there, but
80-90%.
Yeah,
yeah.
You're gonna know. Obviously, it depends on things like how much pre-existing information you have on the topic. But as a rule, you'd understand about 80% plus of it. So when you're watching TEDs now, you're actually studying how they communicate their message, how they present the information that they give you. That's what you're looking at. How much silence do they use? Do they use humor? How clear are they? How do they highlight the information that they want you to remember?
Right.
Those are the type of things that you're looking for when you're listening to any person who's speaking on their own uninterruptedly. These are the sort of the things that you pick up on in this communication style that you're developing. Because at this level, you're developing a communication style. If you're watching what we make, you're in the midst of further developing your communication style.
Right.
So yeah,
Agreed.
I
They're
like
all,
that.
the thing that strikes me about everyone that you've mentioned is there is a very deliberate intention behind what they're telling you. Every word, every sentence, every shift in tone and pitch and speed is very deliberate. It is there because they want you to feel a certain way. They want you to understand something in a particular way. So everything that they're doing reveals a very clear and deliberate intention.
All right, so all this talk about slowing down, enunciating, being clear, has had me thinking, is there a time, or rather, are there times where speaking fast or faster more important or necessary or an effective way to communicate from the way you see it?
Yeah, of course. If you want people to get excited about what you're talking about, speaking a bit faster shows that you are excited, you are passionate, and then people will reflect that emotion in themselves.
One public speaker that does that a lot is Tony Robbins.
Yes.
That's a technique that he uses quite a lot. More often than not, he's speaking very quickly.
Yes. The thing with Tony Robbins, he usually has a lot of information to get through, but he loves everything. You can tell when you watch him speaking, he really loves everything that he's telling you about. But he also, if you listen to him speak, he builds and he builds and he builds, and then he stops. And he pauses. And so he brings it back down again. And then he builds and he builds and he builds and he builds and he builds. And then he hits you with a point. And he leaves silence. And he pauses. So speed, whether it be fast or slow, is a way to build energy, to make a point, to then hold attention, create engagement. Thought. Exactly. It's so fundamentally important to how you speak and how you communicate. There are plenty of times where speaking faster, more quickly is important. Like I said earlier, you don't want to be monotone. You don't want to be mono speed. Mono speed? I don't know if that's a word.
I'm not sure it is, but
single speed, right?
Yeah.
Your voice is your tool. It is your weapon. It is how you engage with your audience. Body language is a huge thing, but that's another video. But when we're talking specifically about slowing down, we look at voice particularly and speeding up.
So far with speeding up, you've mentioned that a place where speeding up is quite useful is when we're trying to excite the audience. Are there any other examples or instances where you think faster pace of speaking is more appropriate or more effective? Rather than appropriate, more effective, yeah. Excitement, definitely. I can definitely see that. Any others?
Commentating on the football. Here comes Thierry Henry down the left. Let me. I'm batting this back over to you. What do you think? What?
Well, I thought of magicians and how they use language quickly, intentionally to confuse the audience to get you distracted by what it is that they're saying so that they move and do any other thing. So
misdirection.
Misdirection could be another reason why, or at least misdirection. Speaking fast can be a very effective way to misdirect. If that's what your intention is, to do that because maybe you want to reveal something later to whoever you're speaking to, or if you're in front of an audience. So I think speaking fast, apart from excitement, misdirection could be it as well.
Obviously, if you're intending then to show whatever it is that you were trying to hide, maybe like the punchline of whatever you're going to say, if it's a joke, for example.
Right. It's used often when you're trying to tell someone something isn't important right now, but remember, we'll come back to it.
That's another one.
Right.
So excitement, misdirection, indicating that this is we'll circle back to this one at a later stage in time.
It's like we would call it an aside, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
So this is a really important thing, but we don't need to worry about that until later on, and then carry on at a normal speed. It's a way of differentiating. I'm telling you something. I'm giving you a little side note about the importance of this thing, and then going back to my normal speed for the main body of the information.
I thought of another reason why we're speaking faster could be useful, and here you can use the contrast of slow and fast, is perhaps in persuasion as well. Sometimes speaking fast makes you come across as though you are such an expert in that field, and I think that's what most of our clients sort of want to be, because most people they know who in their eyes speak a high level of English compared to them are generally people who speak faster than them. So they associate this quickness with being sharp, being intelligent. I don't know if it just stops at language learners. Maybe it's something that we typically all fall victim to as humans to some level.
Right.
But I can definitely say from a language learner's point of view, one of the things that they mention, especially if they speak about someone who is in their eyes better than them in communicating in English, is this pace at which the person speaks while maintaining clarity. They will say they speak so quickly, but I can understand them, sort of a thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, this moves towards the thing that I wanted to speak about next, actually, in terms of presence and the idea of being in the moment in terms of slowing down, a mindful approach. As you mentioned, this is part of the human experience is in this modern age is to do things faster and more all the time. And so our communication has adapted to this now mentality. And so we have this perception that faster is better. And I don't agree with that personally. I think that some of the most meaningful conversations I've had, especially on this particular subject of language learning, right, we're having a conversation in the moment. We've had conversations about preparedness for these conversations, right? And sometimes when we're over prepared, we speed up, we try and get through all of the information, ask all the questions we want to ask, but we've got this, we've got to get through all of it, kind of mentality. And the authenticity of those conversations are not as powerful as the ones where we have done prep, we know what we want to talk about, but our conversation flows much better when we are taking our time about getting from point A to point B. We take the scenic route, but it's a much better connection when we take the scenic route than when we try and fill all the time with all of the things that we want to say.
I think we've both learned that the balance is probably somewhere in between, because even as we are having our conversation, maybe we start off fairly slow, because we know we're making this for people who are learning and still developing the skills in English. So we tend to speak a little bit slower, but yeah, we do get to those moments where we get really excited about something and both of us speaking very quickly and we're very excitable. And I guess that's the part of the podcast where some of the audience maybe slow down a little bit to catch each and every word that we say. Mm-hmm. But even there, you can see how in attempting to speak quicker, I made it more difficult for myself as well to communicate effectively and to pick my words wisely myself as well, right? So I think that's a great demonstration of what happens when we try to speak too quickly. Just finding the right balance, knowing when to slow down, knowing when to speed up a little bit, but generally keeping it on the slower side unless you're trying to excite your audience.
It's a tough one.
Overwhelm. Okay.
Excellent. Yeah, very good.
Overwhelm.
Overwhelm. Overwhelm.
Overwhelm.
Overwhelm.
Overwhelm.
This.
Concise. No.
Close. Concise.
Concise.
Concise. Yes.
Okay. Concise. Concise.
Concise.
Concise.
Concise.
Concise.
For me, the similarities between communication and mindfulness are very clear when we're talking about the subject of pacing, because it's all about breathing. You notice when Ramps was starting to talk quickly, he was doing this and he was going on and on about something, right? Everything is on the out breath. Whereas when you're speaking slowly, clearly, in a way for creating connection with your audience, there are natural points to breathe. You don't feel like it's a struggle to get that breath in. If you feel that way, if you feel like, okay, I need to take a deep breath so then I can give all the information because someone wants to hear everything I have to say and it's really important and I'm nervous and right. If you're having to take that deep breath to get everything you're saying out, you're talking too quickly, right? Follow your breath. If you feel like you need to breathe, slow down. I think that's very clear. And we notice when we do exercises like meditation and mindfulness, the stated intention behind what you're doing is to follow your breath, is to be in tune with your body. And it's the same when you're speaking.
I think when you touch on breath, you touch on everything, because it's at the center of how we speak. It's at the center of how we move. It's at the center of when we slow down, when we go quicker. It is essentially breath. I mean, of course, it's life itself. So it will affect every single other action that we take.
Agreed. If you can do one thing to help your communication is learning to breathe properly, because as humans, we just expect to breathe. It has become an unconscious activity. So something you can really do to help with everything about your communication is to look up breath work and start to understand how to nourish yourself properly through your breath, physically, mentally, with your communication. It will have so many positive effects for your life in general, not just in your second language, not just in your business life, but your life, full stop.
I think when you breathe as well, when you focus on your breathing, it allows you to slow everything down. I think it's, as we've already mentioned, now we're obsessed with instant, not so much gratification, but instant results.
Right.
Instant reactions. You send an email, you expect a reply within an hour or something. Some people call you if you don't reply to the email.
I get two. If I haven't responded to the wife in 2 minutes by text message, I get a call. Because, I've got nothing else happening in my life.
Oh yeah, no, I know the pain. I know the pain all too well, unfortunately.
And very often I'm in the middle of writing the response, but did you get my message? Yes.
Yeah, the one you sent like 15 seconds ago. Yeah, I got that message.
You're not fast enough. 1 week later, having watched our conversation back on slowing down as a tool that you can use in your communication in English, what are your thoughts? What were the highlights for you of the conversation?
I liked that we touched on both slowing down and going faster.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that I thought is really great to add to what we already said is recording yourself and then watching yourself back.
Right.
As I was rewatching it and editing it, I thought, wow, a great other tip to add to it, which I think Ving Jang speaks about it.
Yes.
Recording yourself, then watching it at least twice.
Okay, so what the way that he recommends is record yourself on video the first time you listen to it back. So you just listen to your voice.
Mm-hmm.
Second time you turn off the sound and look at your body, look at what you're doing, how you're presenting yourself. And then the third time watching with both of sound and the visuals.
Having watched it again, I thought to myself, I really like the points that came across when it comes to when to slow down and when to go a little bit quicker.
Right.
And how to use silence as an absolute weapon, not only to allow people to process information, but also to calm yourself down and center yourself and come back to presence.
Right. Agreed. And like you say, it's all about intention. What emotion are you trying to elicit in your audience? If something is very important, then using silence to punctuate the point is very effective. But if you want your audience to get really excited about something, then speeding up and being excited yourself is very, very effective as well.
Clarify, when we say audience, we're not necessarily speaking about public speaking where you're presenting. We're just saying whomever you're speaking to, whether it's like a group conversation or one-on-one conversation.
Yeah.
So it applies here as well. Public speaking in general.
Every time you have an interaction with somebody, whether that's one person or many, they are your audience. We talked a little bit about the cultural nuances of communication right at the beginning of the conversation and how you end up reflecting back who you're speaking to. And I think this is a very important part of good communication. It's knowing your audience. Who am I communicating with? And how do they communicate? Often you will find naturally you will mirror the communication style of the person that you're speaking to. And for you, that is your normal tone and speed when you are speaking with another English speaker is slower and lower. But when you're speaking Italian, you tend to raise your pitch and your tone and speak a bit faster because that's the cultural norm for the language.
Communication is to connect ultimately. We may not use the perfect wording. We may make some mistakes in grammar. We may make some mistakes in word choice or even pronunciation. But we want to connect. Sometimes I've connected with clients based on one of the biggest mistakes they've made. I still remember one client up to today.
Mm-hmm.
You spoke in this episode about how having a knowledge of your client's native sometimes helps us. And the mistake that he made connected me with this guy forever. And our relationship as client changed immediately after that because I understood that he tried to find a way and he showed a bit of understanding. The word he used, instead of I am very busy at the moment, referring to that moment in time, he said, oh, Ramps, this is a very impegnative moment. So for those of our audience who don't speak Italian, impegnativo is demanding. Mm-hmm. And in Italian, you'd say, yes, if it's a time that is quite demanding, you'd say tempo impegnativo. Mm-hmm. And I still remember him to this day for that. And we connected and we actually created a great relationship. So sometimes mistakes lead to language mistakes lead to stronger and more meaningful connections. So lean into it. And he leaned into it. I laughed when he said it. Like it was clear to him that it was a genuine laugh. I wasn't laughing at him. I was laughing at the situation. And then I corrected him and he laughed at himself as well. And then I went on to say, look, man, it's not so bad. It means you've understood that TIVE as the suffix of the word in English is often an adjective. So even in that mistakes, he showed a level of understanding of something, a pattern that he had picked up. And language learning, a big part of it is pattern recognition. So some of the mistakes are actually helping you realize that you've noticed a pattern.
Exactly. And on that note, please connect with us. Leave a comment with your thoughts on this subject in the box down below. We'd love to hear what you think about how quickly you speak and whether you can slow down or speed up, and use all of the techniques that we talked about in today's video. And also, quick reminder, today's Spot the Collie was words that connect with the word intention. How many did you manage to find? Also, tell us in the comments below.
That's it for today. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in 2 weeks' time.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Ciao.